Okay, so in this video I'll be showing you how to make a very simple player controller, allowing them to run and jump. So it should be a good start for whatever you've got planned for your projects. Okay, so we are currently in a new Universal 2D template, and we can just get straight into it. So first things first, I'm going to have to make the player and the ground. So I'm going to right click here and create a 2D object, sprite, a square. The first one will represent our player, and we can just duplicate that to represent our ground. I'll call this one ground, and I'll call this one player. Okay, both of them need a box collider because we want them to collide with each other. So we can just add a component here and box collider 2D. Make sure it's 2D, not your 3D one. And do the same for our player. I'm just going to make my player green here. Make it whatever colour you like. And I'll make the ground brown. And then I'm just going to change the scale here on the X to maybe, I don't know, 9. And drag it down a bit. Okay. Next up, we need a rigid body. 2D. Remember, always we're working in 2D. And simulated, everything here can be the same. And if we play now, you'll see the player drops and he collides with the ground. So we can now get started on our player controller. I'm going to go back down here, add component, and I'm just going to call my thing, I'm going to write player movement. Like, this doesn't exist, so we need to create a new script. I'm going to click here, create an add, and you'll see it's been added down there, and I'm going to double click on it to open it up. So first variables we need access to the rigid body on the player. So I'm going to get access to rigid body 2D. I'm going to call this RB. We'll need a reference. We'll make this public so we can actually see it in the Unity engine. So a public float, which is just a decimal number. And I'll call it speed. It's how fast the player is going to be moving. And I'll create another public float called x input. So this is going to be a value of either 0, which means the player is not moving, -1 means they're moving backwards, or 1, which means they're moving forward. So we can get started with the function. Oh wait, actually first of all we will get access to the rigid body. So we say at the start, so when we press play, it's going to set our rigid body to get component rigid body 2D, which is just going to get access to the component on our player, right? Whatever this script's attached to. So we now have a reference to the rigid body, and now we just need a new function to handle horizontal movement, moving left to right. So create the void. I'm going to call it horizontal movement. And we'll get started. So first of all, we need to set the x input. X input is going to be equal to, we're going to access the input library, input.get axis, and inside there we're going to pass through the word horizontal, and that is our x input. So now we just need to apply that to our rigid body. So I'm going to type here rb.linear velocity, so the velocity on our rigid body is going to be equal to a new vector, which should just be the direction, and I'm going to type in x input, which which is our 1, -1 or 0 room. And we're going to times that by our speed. And so this is going to be on the X, right? So horizontal. And on the Y, we're just going to leave that as RV dot linear velocity dot Y. So whatever the velocity of the Y is at that time. So if we're jumping, it would count for that as well. And that should be all. We just need to put this in the update function so that we're checking it for every frame. Checking for input every frame, horizontal movement. And we go back into Unity and check this out to see what we have. If I click play, nothing will happen. But you'll see the X would appear here, which doesn't need to be public. My bad. But if we change speed to something like 5, now you'll see, but as you can see, X input 0 we're not moving, 1 when we're moving to the right, and when we're moving to the left, backwards, it's -1. Okay, now that's done, the next thing we need to add is a jump. So, one thing we need to add is a way for our player to check if they're touching the ground. So on our player, if you right click on the player, and we will add an empty game object, and we can call this ground check. So this is what's going to be checking for the thing, and we don't want it on the middle of our player, we just want it just below there, so it's touching his feet. And we can just go back onto our player movement script, and we'll need some jump variables. First thing will be our public float, and we can call this jump force, so how powerful our jump is going to be. I'm just going to make this not public because we don't need our X input to be public. That's a mistake. So our jump force, and we're going to, what else do we need? We need the variables for the ground check. So we need how big the ground check is. So we're going to say another public float ground check radius. So the reason we're making a radius is because we're going to use basically a circle collision to check for our ground. So this is just going to be the radius of that circle. And we're going to need a ground check position also. Public transform, which was the position, the rotation, position, rotation, and scale. Sorry. So this is going to be ground check position, and now we can get started on our functions, right? So first one is we want to know when we're touching the ground, obviously. So we're going to do bool, because here for horizontal movement we did void, which we did void, which means return nothing, but here we want to return a boolean, which is a value of true or false. So they're boolean, and we're going to call this is grounded. Now how are we going to check for it's grounded? It's like I said earlier, a circle collision. So I'm going to access the physics library, physics 2D dot overlap circle. You can use this for all sorts of things, it's really handy if you want to check a collision between two objects. And inside we're going to pass through some things that we made here. So we've got the ground check radius, ground check position. So first thing, it wants the point, which will be our ground check position dot position. Because Brombar transform is like all three, the scale, rotation, but we just want the position. And on radius, we're going to add our ground check radius. And the one thing that I forgot see when I click do a comma, it comes up with an in layer mask, which is going to be the layer of our ground, which I can show you. If I go back into Unity now and go on our ground, the layer currently is default. We don't want that. Oh, I see I've already added a ground layer, but it won't show that for you. So you're going to click add layer and go to any of these. I put it here, and you're just going to type in ground, because it's going to be our ground layer. And then we can click off that, and now you should see it here, the way I've already got it. So I'm going to click on ground, and now that layer is ground. And we can go back into our script and access it. So public layer mask ground check layer, and we can now pass that through here, ground check layer. And the great thing about this is this function will return a boolean, so we can literally just click return here, you know, and now this function will return. Now we can do a thing, create the function for our actual jumping. So with our jump, it's going to keep it simple, like we did with horizontal movement. I'm just going to add a force to the y-axis, because here we added it to the x-axis because we're moving horizontally, but now we just want to add a nice little jumping force. So rb.linear velocity, exactly the same as our horizontal. rb.linear velocity is equal to new vector2, and we're going to, so like we did here where we just passed through the linear velocity, whatever our velocity on the y is, we're going to do that here. rb.linear velocity.x. Now that we've got the x, we now need the y, which will just be our jump force, which we added up here, if you remember. Great. Now we only want to jump if is grounded. So we're calling this function, which returns a true or false thing. So if this is true, then we can jump. If it's not, we cannot jump. And we just, like we did with horizontal movement, we'll just pass through jump here. And that should be everything with our script. Hopefully, if we now go into Unity, look on our player, we can see we've got a couple of variables here. Speed, we've set 5 already. Jump force, we'll put it to 10. Our ground check radius, so how big the collision circle here is going to be, will be about 0.5. That does 0.2. Nothing crazy. And then the position will be, we'll just drag our ground check into there. And our layer is our ground layer, which we created earlier. And that should be everything. Just move that up there so you can see a bit better. And now if I click play, you should have a player that, oh, he's jumping constantly now, every time he hits ground. Which is cool, but not what we're looking for. We're looking for, the reason why is because we haven't set it to any input. In here, just above jump in our update, we can do another if statement. If something happens, we want to jump. That something being pressing spacebar or whatever button you want. So I'm going to do input again, get the input library like we did here. Instead of get axis, we're going to do dot get key down, and inside that we're going to pass through key code. So we're going to get a key code, and that key code is going to be, could be a V if you want it, but I'm going to make it space. Now it should only jump if we click space. Now back in Unity, click play, and now it doesn't jump. We can move, but then until we click space, he's jumping. Now this looks really floaty, so I'll show you a few things you can do to Also, one thing you'll notice is it's very light, but sometimes it will collide a bit into the ground. In order to get rid of this, change collision detection from discrete to continuous, which will just check for collisions a lot more often. And I'm going to change gravity scale to 9.8, which will make it very hard to jump, basically. But in our player movement, which I don't think you can see, I'm trying to drag that up here a bit. Player movement, I'm going to set jump force to about double. Now it's 20, that's a lot of also it's harder to move, so I'll change speed to 15, change this to 30. But you can play around with it, whatever you like, and yeah, that's your simple character controller for now. I do hope that helped, and good luck with your game development endeavors.